97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with 97.3 ESPN.com's Andrew DiCecco. Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
You know, we recognize the ability of the roster that's put together right now. And I think we have the ability to do something really special with this group, but it's going to take a lot of hard work.
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now, and they'll match your first deposit up to $250. Go to PlaySugarHouse.com and win real money with their sports books and casino games from the comfort of your home. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Andrew DiCecco is in the house for Football at 4. And we got a lot of Eagles stuff at the bye week here I want to get into, and this just the NFC East in general. You know, over at 97.3 ESPN.com, Andrew, I wrote a story about who will win the NFC East. And I went through everybody's schedule. And I can't find a team with a schedule that can get them to 7 wins. Am I wrong there? Do you see a 7-win team? I got 6-9-1 Philadelphia as the best path to victory on this. We're talking on Election Day. What's the path to victory? I see 6-9-1 the best of the group.
Yeah, as pathetic as that sounds, Mike, I have to agree with you there. I think the Eagles win the division with 6 wins. It's a crapshoot, really. I mean, it's anyone's guess. But, I mean, given everything that's kind of transpired throughout the season so far, Dallas is in disarray. Andy Dalton now is in the COVID protocol, and now they're looking at possibly starting Cooper Rush at quarterback over Ben DiNucci. They're just in complete disarray. And Washington, they do have a nice defense. I like what they've done there. They have a couple nice pieces on offense. I don't know that they have enough to take hold of the NFC East. I think it's ultimately going to be the Eagles, but it's going to be a kind of a stumble to the finish line there.
Well, I was going to say, all right, you watched the Giants last night. You can make a case that the Giants, even though they haven't won, have looked the most consistent at least. Like they're losing close games. 1-7 though, just 1-6. So it just seems that they got to have way too much go their way. But, you know, the Eagles play them coming up. They play Washington coming up. They can kind of be right back in this thing in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, you notice I didn't add the Giants to that list because it just seems like they've dug themselves too much of a hole. As crazy as that sounds in this division, that's kind of a toss-up. But what I saw last night from them was very encouraging. They have that momentum going forward. I mean, they took one of the best teams in the NFC, you know, down to the wire, and I thought they played, you know, they played well on defense, but they really impressed me on offense. Obviously, Daniel Jones, he's kind of a wild card out there, chucking it up, and he's not the most accurate guy, but they do have some pieces on offense as far as wide receiver Sterling Shepard. Evan Ingram made some plays last night. Golden Tate has made some massive plays that we have not been accustomed to seeing here in Philadelphia. They have the tools that they need. I just think that they've kind of fallen too far behind that to really make a dent.
I don't know that anybody's too far behind, but I see what you're saying. I mean, you look at Washington, currently 2-5. They have that win over Philly that they can bank. They have 3. Everybody has 3 games left in the division. Everybody's played each other once, so they each play each other one more time. They have a combined record of 25-19-1 of teams they still have to play. They have a couple winnable games. Detroit, Carolina, the Bengals. If they are able to somehow beat Detroit, Carolina, and the Bengals, and then 2 of their NFC games, that still only gets them to 6 wins. That's why I find, you know, Washington to be in a tough spot. But I guess they would. Do you think it's a 2-team race between Philly and Washington?
I do, and I don't know that they get to 6 wins because that Bengals game is not a gimme. The Bengals have remained competitive in every game that they've played in. Joe Burrow has the offense playing at a high level. They have a lot of young receivers there that they're getting playing time to, and T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Alden Tate, A.J. Green, and the defense has a lot of young prospects there to work with. And I just think that there's a lot of youthful there's like a youth infusion there in Cincinnati that they're going to probably knock off Washington there. But, I see them with finishing with 5 wins.
Okay. If Dallas gets back Dalton, does that change anything?
I don't think so, Mike, to be honest with you. I mean, Andy Dalton is I've always liked Andy Dalton a little bit more than most. I thought that, he's the type of quarterback that needs he needs the ideal situation around him to really make a dent in his division. I mean, you saw in 2015, I believe, when he had Mohamed Sanu and he had A.J. Green and he had Marvin Jones and Gio Bernard and Jeremy Hill. You saw the level of football that he was playing, but in Dallas, there's just not enough. I mean, he has the receivers around him, but there's just so much internal turmoil that's going on there that can kind of just disrupt any season or anyone's season, really. And there's some dissent there in the ranks, and it's just not a really stable environment for success right now. And their defense is obviously a mess. So and when he was with Cincinnati, he had a defense to kind of support him there those years that he was good. So I don't know that he will make much of a difference coming back for Dallas.
All right, and then there's Philly, of course, where I got to be honest with you. I don't know that they get a win outside of the 3 games in their division, which means they have to beat the Giants, they have to beat Dallas, and they have to beat Washington. If they were to win another game, they've got – it's a stretch that I don't know where you find one, but you tell me, Andrew, of the group of games that they have other than the division games, they've got Cleveland, Seattle, Green Bay, New Orleans, and Arizona. That's 5 games. They're going to be a underdog, I would imagine, in all 5 games. But which of those games do they have the best shot in?
I would say Cleveland. Cleveland is a team that is inconsistent week to week. Obviously, they have plenty of firepower there with Kareem Hunt. They may have Nick Chubb back by that time. Remember, they lost Odell Beckham. Baker Mayfield is a streaky quarterback. We've grown accustomed to kind of seeing that. I mean, that's going to be your opportunity to get a win there. And let's not overlook the Giants game that's coming up here, because had it not been for Evan Ingram dropping the ball on late in that game, the Giants win that game. And based on what you saw last night, the Eagles cannot, if they play like they did against Dallas, well, guess what? The Giants are probably going to win that one.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. Now that the dust has settled, no trades really have happened. The Eagles made no trade. This is what they're going with here. Is there a message there that they didn't do anything? I mean, is there a message that, hey, because this season seems so weird, is that you're the favorite to win the division, but you know your team needs a lot of help?
Yeah, and you said it right there. I didn't expect there to be a whole lot of movement, because they need a lot of help in a lot of areas. The one area that I would have addressed in the trade deadline is outside corner. We talk about, should something happen to Avonte Maddox again? Well, now you're looking at Michael Jacquet or Cravon LeBlanc. Take your pick of a lot of these depth corners that aren't really adept to playing on the outside. That becomes a problem there. You mentioned their tough slate of games coming up here, and that's a position where they can least afford to lose anyone. That's where I would have addressed it. Maybe a veteran running back. I mentioned Frank Gore on the show yesterday. That would have been a nice addition there. But I mean, I think given the outlook of the NFC East right now, you just have to win 6 games. The bar is so low right now that you have to trust what you have there, regroup at the bye week, and kind of move forward from there, because the Eagles have the coaching staff, in my opinion, and the stability and the veteran leadership to win that division. And once you get into the playoffs, kind of anything can happen, really.
Prior to the trade deadline ending, Will Parks was on the market. What was your overall thoughts on that? Like, did you think that was weird Will Parks was available? I know that they were getting some safeties back, and that came into the mix. But, it was interesting when we saw the name originally.
Yeah, it was definitely shocking to me to see that, Hunter, because when he was signed, he was considered to be one of the best value signings of free agency, along with Javon Hargrave. But Will Parks, they had plans to use him a number of different ways. Unfortunately, he got hurt, and he was really never able to kind of find a rhythm and find a role in the defense. But he played pretty well on Sunday night, and he hasn't played a ton. They have a lot of guys there at the safety position, and I really think look, I know the fans' opinion of Marcus Epps isn't very high right now, but the Eagles like the guy. Like it or not, they're seeing something in Marcus Epps that they like to give him playing time. Kayvon Wallace is another guy who they like, but he only plays special teams on Sunday night. He didn't see any defensive snaps. Those are two guys right there that I think that they would really like to work into the defense, and they see them as pieces of the future. And Will Parks is a guy that has value around the NFL. You talk about his versatility, and he was only there on a one-year deal, probably wasn't going to get re-signed. Why not? I understand what their thought process was at this point. They may have liked what they saw from their young safeties and wanted to try and get some value for a player that probably won't be here past 1 year.
If TJ Edwards wasn't available to come back and have that game that we saw last week, do you think that they would have tried to target a linebacker, or would they have stayed with Riley and Singleton?
I think they may have been a little bit more aggressive trying to get Avery Williamson from the Jets, had it not been from that encouraging performance that we saw from TJ Edwards on Sunday night. TJ Edwards was the best player on the Eagles on Sunday night. I know that's not a very high bar to clear given the outlook of that game, but he was everywhere. He had 12 tackles. He had a sack, that strip sack there. He's a player that he's gotten better the more snaps that he's played. Last season, I believe he only played 10% of the defensive snaps. He's their guy. I mean, he's a little bit limited athletically, but you get him coming downhill. He's very instinctive, and he can shoot the gap and diagnose plays very quickly. And he's a good blitzer. He's someone that I think that he pairs very nicely with Alex Singleton. I think their two playing styles complement each other very well. Singleton's a little bit more rangy, a little bit more athletic, can do a little bit more in coverage. But I think that, they both have this smash mouth style about them that I think kind of adds a little attitude to the second level that you really haven't seen. And, when Nathan Gary does come back, he's going to be in a backup role because if these two guys continue to play like they have, I think the Eagles have found their linebacker pairing for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think the linebacker position, not great, has been less of an issue than it was. It also cost them a couple of games, I think you could say, early. The Bengals game, the Rams game, I think they really struggled in. The Washington game, I think they really struggled in. Let's stay on that defensive side of the ball. Typically, Jim Schwartz speaks today. The linebacker spot we feel, average about. The secondary here, you got Slay, Maddox, and then obviously McLeod and Mills. Is there anybody else, like you mentioned, Parks, the corner spot? Is that the best group for the second half of the season, the guys who are currently there?
The safety group I like. I like the safety group a good bit, and it's nice to see that they were able to – that they held on to Will Parks because I do think that he can really elevate the play of the secondary. I think that, once you have this bye week where you have a healthy Will Parks, you can kind of identify where you want to use him and how you want to use him. And he should be playing a lot more than he has coming out of the bye week. Corner scares me, Mike, a little bit there because, yeah, you mentioned they have Darius Slay. He's going to handle his side, his assignment week in and week out. But on the other side, you have Avonte Maddox. And Avonte Maddox, to me, is a nickel corner that's being forced to play on the outside because that's the person that's pretty much what the Eagles have right now. They need him to play out there out of necessity. I think next season he'll ultimately be in the nickel role, but they're very thin there. Like I said, if something happens to Maddox again, you're looking at Michael Jacquet, you're looking at moving the 5'7", Nikel Roby-Coleman on the outside, or Crayvon LeBlanc, and he's not really equipped to play out there. He doesn't have that long speed that you need to play out there, or the length. So that is with the receivers that they're going to be facing coming up here. I mean, that's a position to watch because they don't have much to work with there.
Let's move to the defensive line. Do you think Brandon Graham is getting enough praise? I mean, the year that he's having is unbelievable, and I feel like it's kind of sliding under the radar.
Yeah, it is, and Brandon Graham is someone that he's consistent week in and week out. He always has that relentless motor. He plays with outstanding leverage. He gives these offensive tackles fits because Brandon's not a very tall guy. He plays with with tremendous pad level and quickness and strength, and he frustrates offensive tackles because you know what? He's coming off that edge fast week in and week out, and he makes plays in the backfield against the run, and he's just a very solid player, and I don't think that he's gotten the credit that he deserves. But he's on pace to have his best season of his career. And you talk about someone who's never gotten the accolades that he really deserves. And I think when you look at the season where it hasn't gone the way that many of us envisioned, he's been one of the bright spots along with Travis Fulgham. I think that Brandon Graham's been the best player on the defense.
Do you think that there's a reason why that is? Are there other people, maybe Hargrave being added to the mix, that forces offensive lines to think about him more? Like, do you think there is another reason why Brandon Graham is being able to be so effective?
I do think that, adding another competent player to play alongside Fletcher Cox, where Fletcher's not always getting double teamed week in and week out, I think that certainly helps. You're also getting good play from the other side. Josh Sweat's playing well. Derek Barnett's played well in spurts. It's more of a collective effort. Malik Jackson has played well. There's not just a focus on him and Fletcher Cox. He's now getting more support around him. And, he just seems to – he doesn't ever seem to run out of steam. He brings it in the fourth quarter, and many of his big plays have been in the fourth quarter. And, he's just been a stable presence there. And I think that he needs to be an Eagle. I think they need to find a way to keep him in midnight green, for the rest of his career.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. I want to go over and get some thoughts on the offensive side of the ball. How much different, the offense struggled the other night, and we were all excited about getting some guys back. How much different are they? And Boston Scott had a good game, so how much different are they with Miles Sanders?
They're a lot different. They just need a lot more dynamic, and they can do a lot more. There can be a lot more diversity in their play calling, but they need better play from their quarterback. I mean, you can put Miles Sanders back there, and he probably would have easily had 100 yards against that Dallas defense. But there's guys that are running open, and Carson needs to hit these guys. I think that no matter who you have out there, if you're not getting that competent quarterback play, that high-level quarterback play that we've seen from Carson in the past, it doesn't matter, who you have out there.
At tight end, you've got Goddard. I don't know if Ertz is even going to come back and what kind of impact he would have, but I would like to see Goddard a little bit more involved than he was the other night. But you have Goddard there, and then, of course, we talked about the receivers with Fulgham, Rieger, and Ward. What's Alshon Jeffrey's role once he kind of infiltrates back in with Goddard? I mean, it seems like he's going to be third, fourth, fifth, maybe in the target tree.
Well, if he ever comes back, I feel like Alshon's been away. They didn't
trade him, so he's still going to be. They didn't trade him, so he's going to be here.
If he makes his way back onto the field, I should say, ever. It feels like he's been gone so long, he's almost become an afterthought. But, those three guys that you mentioned are going to be the primary focus. They're going to continue to grow with those guys. They're the pieces of the future. Alshon is going to be a spot player, much like Arcega-Whiteside. That's kind of how I view it. He's going to be a red zone presence and someone that you can put out there in jump ball situations. He's not going to be an every down player by far. I mean, he needs to earn those reps back, because in his absence, a lot of guys have kind of risen to the occasion, and they have their trio of receivers and quartet, really, if you want to add John Hightower to that mix. So. I just see him as a rotational player when he does make it back on the field.
Yeah, and Ertz, too. I wonder what kind of role, if Ertz gets back for, say, the final 3-4 games of the season, what kind of role does he even have with all these guys? I mean, do you go back to play 12 personnel?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a player of Zach Ertz's caliber is always going to have an impact on the offense, and his rapport with Carson Wentz. I mean, obviously this season you haven't seen the Zach Ertz of old, but he's not going to take a back seat. If he does make it back onto the field by the end of the season for this playoff push, he's going to have a role. Like you said, I would like to see Goddard have more of a role. I know he didn't do a whole lot on Sunday night, but they do have a lot of pieces there, and their offensive line starting to get healthy. You talk about Isaac Seumalo probably coming back after the bye week, and then you're going to have a decision to make with what you do with Mailata and what you do with Peters and et cetera. But they're going to have some pieces there to really make a run.
When looking at all these weapons, I see the way that they use Boston Scott, and I know that they're different players, but sometimes do you wonder, can they use Miles Sanders differently at times? I mean, I think about how they use Sanders. I see what they're doing with Scott now, and I don't know. I mean, sometimes I do feel like I'm underwhelmed with the Miles Sanders usage.
Yeah, Hunter. If you remember before the season, one thing that I thought was that he was going to be more of a factor as a receiver, Miles Sanders. That is, I thought they were going to, move him into the slot, get him on the move, utilize his receiving ability and ability to, win down the field on linebackers and safeties. They really haven't done that, and they haven't given Miles Sanders enough carries when he's proven to be fresh and be productive when he has gotten his opportunities. I've been underwhelmed as well as far as his usage. I think he has a lot more in the tank, and leaves a lot of meat on the bone as far as what he could possibly bring to the offense.
I do feel, and I want to see if you agree, that him and for whatever reason, him and Wentz do not have a great connection throwing the ball to him on swing passes, stuff out of the backfield. I feel like Wentz and Sanders are just never on the same page out of the backfield.
Yeah, last year against Washington, I thought he made one of the better throws I've seen him make, Wentz to Miles Sanders in the corner of the end zone. But there's been a lot of times where it seems like they're not on the same page for whatever reason. Miles dropped a big pass the other week, and it's something that's kind of odd, but I don't read too much into it. I think that once they use him more in that role, and I think repetition, you get into that rhythm. Obviously, the truncated off season doesn't help, but I think that they really need to continue to go back to Miles and use him in that role, and I think you'll start to see Wentz and him establish more of a rapport.
Now, real quick, the deals that were made, not today, but there was a couple yesterday. Avery Williamson ended up getting traded. Also, you had the one trade, Desmond King to the Titans.
King, yeah.
Would you have been interested in either one? I mean, Williamson, definitely. I don't know what they ended up giving up, but would Desmond King for a 6-rounder made sense?
Desmond King is a good player, don't get me wrong. I think he would have definitely impacted the return game and right off the bat. But they have so many players that have a similar skill set to Desmond King. Desmond's pretty much a nickel player. He can do a lot of the things that Will Parks can. So if Will Parks is there, there's really no need for a guy like Desmond King.
By the way, the Williamson deal was a 2022 5th-rounder and they got back a 2022 7th-rounder. So they got Williamson for a 5th-rounder in 2022.
Yeah, and they have an influx of talent at the linebacker position for the Steelers, and they just got even deeper. That's a steal, by the way, for a player of Avery Williamson's caliber. I'm not saying that he's an all-pro or anything like that, but he's certainly better than any player that the Eagles have at the position right now. Doesn't give you much in the pass in pass coverage, but he is a very sharp-minded football player, instinctive, downhill thumper. Just a tough, fundamentally sound football player, and the Eagles don't have enough of those on that side of the ball. So, it's a head-scratcher because they pretty much gave him away.
He's Andrew DiCecco at DiCecco NFL. Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you locally by PlaySugarHouse.com. Make your sign up today and get up to $250 in your first deposit. He is Andrew DiCecco, and of course, the Eagles with the bye this week. They'll get ready for the New York Football Giants next week, and Andrew will be back to talk about that on Monday. Andrew, take care, pal.
You got it, guys. Have a great week.
Good stuff from him, as always, here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.